Get rugby updates directly to your inbox plus subscribe. Thank you for subscribing. Could not subscribe. Try again later. Invalid email. Paul Clement often outlined to the media just how aware he was of the brutalities of football management. Stints as an assistant at the likes of Chelsea, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich had highlighted just how cutthroat the modern game can be. As had a spell at Derby where he was unceremoniously ditched despite the club being in the championship playoff places. Yet when he joined his players for a lap of appreciation after helping the Swans pull off a dramatic escape from relegation, even he surely could not have foreseen how quickly the wheel would turn for him. 7 months later and the 45-year-old finds himself out of work and looking for a new opportunity. It was an ignominious end to a tenure that looked to promise so much, but ultimately fell short. Regardless of how it all ended, Clement deserves to be remembered with some gratitude in these parts. Swansea were sleepwalking towards the championship before his January appointment. Of course the players more than played their part, but it was those same players who had floundered under Bob Bradley. They were almost transformed under Clement. The decision to jettison club legend Alan Curtis from the first-team coaching staff proved unpopular and did little for Clement in the court of public opinion as he stepped into the hot seat. Yet the reaction and improvement Clement oversaw saw Swansea enjoy their best half-season spell in the Premier League. From the turn of the year to the end of 2016-17 they were the 8th best side in the top flight. They were not necessarily a pretty team to watch, but they were efficient and effective with Gylfi Sigurdsson and Fernando Llorente providing the cutting edge. Once safety was secured, the summer was always likely to be key in ensuring there is no repeat of relegation troubles. Instead it was a period that left Clement with more questions than answers. The protracted saga over the sale of Sigurdsson to Everton stymied Swansea's efforts, while Llorente was a deadline day departure to Tottenham. The likes of Roque Mesa, Sam Clucas, Renato Sanchez and Wilfried Bony came through the door, but the belated nature of many arrivals, Clucas, Sanchez and Bony signed in the final knockings of the window, left Clement playing catch-up. It quickly became clear that Swansea's summer business was not working out as Bony suffered with injuries, while Sanchez and Clucas struggled for form and Mesa took time to adapt to his new surroundings. There were 8 central midfielders in his squad, but just one specialist left back. With Bony injured, he was left to rely on a 20-year-old Premier League rookie in Tammy Abraham for goals. Image. Getty Images Europe. It was here that Clement began to run into difficulties. There had always been a view among supporters of a negativity in his approach. Pragmatism was probably a fairer word for it, but some dissatisfaction was there to be heard when his decision to bring on a defender late on in the goalless draw at Southampton was met by boos from the away end. With goals hard to come by, those frustrations only grew. Add in a tangible uncertainty over his best formation and lineup and matters soon got worse. It should be said that these were not all issues of his own making. Few supporters would doubt Clement was working with an inherently weak squad, and it was one of the reasons why club chiefs had hoped to give him the January window to strengthen. But there was also a feeling that it was still capable of better than what it was producing when it mattered most. Even though players and staff talked in glowing terms publicly and privately of his abilities and methods as a coach, some staff went as far as to compare him to Brendan Rodgers. A warm tribute indeed. However, as defeats began to pile up, Clement often seemed to second-guess himself, occasionally responding to outside influence rather than trusting his instincts. His decision to field 5 at the back against Watford backfired spectacularly, leading to an apology to supporters. Wingers were tried, ditched and brought back again. The midfield diamond, used to such effect during the final run-in last term, was used sparingly. Having laid solid foundations, Clement was having trouble building the rest of the house. The lack of attacking spark Swansea at times appeared to be a team playing by numbers, fed into disquiet and anxiety among supporters at the Liberty, where the club's record has been wretched this term. On the rare occasions when Swansea did pick up a result, they could not build on it. The only consistency they could muster was in the regularity of defeats. Inevitably, in such circumstances, the spotlight began to turn on Clement. Getty Images. He regularly insisted he was the man to turn it around, but his reaction and body language when dealing with some defeats told its own story. He had looked a beaten man following the loss at Stoke earlier this month and did not hold back in his criticism of himself and his players. A few days later he denied being a man at the end of his tether. But it was difficult not to be left with that impression on first viewing of that press conference. The desire remained to stick with him if possible, with club bosses mindful of that job he had done last season. But as more and more defeats racked up, and the likes of Everton, Crystal Palace and West Ham, all with new managers, began to make upward progress, it had started to feel like a case of when, rather than if, the denouement would come. Some fans will rejoice, but this is another sad chapter for Swansea City. Clement had appeared an appointment harking back to how the club used to do things. A young, hungry coach, with excellent credentials and a desire to prove himself on his own terms. He had looked to be such a good fit. Instead he joins a lengthening roll call of the men who have passed through: Gary Monk, Francesco Guidolin, Bob Bradley and now Clement. Swansea's failings were not solely down to him. The responsibility has to be shared around among the club hierarchy and a group of players whose actions have not backed up their words. But managers know the score, including Clement. However, when they keep coming and going with the regularity with which they have at Swansea City in recent years, then questions have to be asked of the club themselves, particularly one for so long renowned for its impeccable appointments.